Now we've got almost 20 minutes for questions and comments. I'd be very grateful if you'd make them brief and to the point. Please introduce yourselves when you speak. So, who'd like to go first? Yes.
Yes, I'm one leader. I'm a volunteer with the National Health Service. I went to the big demonstration in Manchester. We circled around the Tory conference, not able to get anywhere near the media blackout was complete. There was very little news of this demonstration. Although there was 55,000 people on this morning, not a scrap of news on anything, on the news, on the telly, in the papers. There was just one letter, less than that, from obviously from an activist, and that's all we got printed.
Thank you. Could we have a second comment before we put it to our panel? Yes.
I'm the one from the Socialist Party. I just wanted to say when we talk about debts that we're in, you've got to remember that in 1945, the country had actually 250% of GDP, the amount we make every year, in debt, which is far higher than it is now, and yet we still founded the NHS, we founded the welfare system, we built cancer houses, we rebuilt the country after the Blitz. And if we could do that then there is still the money in society now to fund our public services, and it's a united fight back. We need our thing to actually save things, because everything is under attack simultaneously. Schools, hospitals, the post office, all of it is under threat of being turned into academies of free schools, privatisation, of being fragmented, broken up and sold off. So we need a united fight back, I think.
Thank you.
Media blackouts, I mean, I think that's something we need to think about. Really. I mean, you even get, when you sort of maybe analyse it, even like things like tiny little things like the paper review, it never seemed to be anybody of the left. Just on 1945, I think that's absolutely true, but I think why it's more serious now, I don't think it's just about money, because now there's no Soviet Union. And one of the reasons why, particularly in Western Europe and in the UK, that occurred because the ruling class were terrified, rightly or wrongly, terrified of the impact of the Soviet, communism, worldwide communism, if you like. That's one of the reasons why they kind of had it so good, these last, neoliberals have had it so good, because, I don't know how many people know the book, The End of History. They think everything has been settled. The whole idea that somehow you could have a collective approach to particular problems for society, is considered ridiculous. And you still got, within this country, an infection that the market solves every problem, whether that be in the Liberal Party, the Tory Party, or the Labour Party. The idea that, markets are always the best determinant of a particular solution, and we're still fighting it. But I think, it's absolutely true, correct and true about the 45 days of government, but you have to deal with the context of when that was.
Okay, I'm going to take you, Susan and Sally, and then I'm going to take Anna, Peter and Wayne.
My name's Alan. I'm just helping publicise the forthcoming United Resistance Conference. Where I wanted to start from, though, is I think it's fascinating at the moment, because a number of speakers from the floor and the top table have talked about last Sunday's fantastic demonstration of 55,000 people. When these calls are made by the TUC and so on, the response is bigger than they expect. It's actually that I think the TUC forecast was that 30,000 or 40,000 people would turn up in Manchester. What was it, 55,000, 60,000 people turned out. That's the anger at the Tories and at austerity at the moment. I had the privilege of being in Sheffield on Tuesday at a teachers' rally, joint PDT and NASUWT, 2,000 striking teachers in Sheffield Leisure Centre there. Absolutely brilliant atmosphere. Christine Blower, the General Secretary of the NUT, says you know, this is much bigger than we expected it to be. In other words, when those official calls are made, people respond brilliantly. But the other thing is that we can win at the moment. And so I had the great privilege of being up at the Hovis strike. Ian probably didn't speak about it because he wants to leave it to speak about later on. And I hope people go and listen to him about it. But massively inspiring. 300 people at the strike rally, and they won against 0 hours contracts, didn't they? And they're not the only ones. You can go through it. The Glasgow social care dispute, they walked out in defence of a suspended worker there who was refusing to do the work of a vacant post. And they walked out unofficially, 10 of them, and then by the Monday, 100 people have walked out on unofficial strike. By the Wednesday, the woman had been reinstated in her job. At the moment, we can fight back and we can strike and win. But we have to get back to a point. The high point was when 2.6 million people struck together over pensions on the 30th of November 2011. We have to get back to there. So that when the postal workers, sorry, it's a very final point. When the postal workers come out, you know, we want to fight for postal workers, to be out with the firefighters, to be out with the teachers. Actually, united action and fighting back together is what can win and force the Tory government back.
Thanks for your comment.
I've been trying to, this week you asked questions, I've really been trying to put my comments in the form of questions, which was, I'm looking at the total budget for the Department of Work and Pensions, which is like 380 odd billion, but the amount which is actually spent on out of work benefits is less than 6. So it's a very, very tiny amount. So how can we make people aware that even if we got rid of, God forbid, Josie's allowance altogether, it will still actually make no difference to the total amount which is spent in a budget, because it is just an ideological attack rather than something which is designed to save money. It's not going to save anything. All the teachers that are going to be there all day in the job centre teaching people, as they said is going to happen, it's going to cost a lot more. It won't be safe having people out working unsupervised that don't have the skills, so how can we address that?
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm sorry. It's just a question. You're talking about the unemployment situation. I'm just wondering whether you think it's a deliberate government policy to have high unemployment to keep the rest of us, all the people that aren't out of work, in check and accepting low wages and poor standards. Just wondered if you think it's a deliberate government policy.
Do I think it's a good, yeah, government policy? I think, you know, the only people that benefit from unemployment are businesses and obviously the Tories. The Tories that want high unemployment because it creates a significant amount of labour that forces terms and conditions down and forces pay down. I mean, you know, they come up with these schemes such as work, knowing full well that they'll have an impact on people's pay. You know, I mean, what we've seen in this country, because obviously the Tories learned from the last time they were in power that 3 million unemployed gives them bad press, and they don't like bad press, they like good press, which is why they say one thing and do another. But what they've done is, and what they've managed to achieve is, they've managed to bring in legislation and changes to employment practice that has enabled workers to face some of the most vicious cuts to pay, vicious cuts to working hours, that's enabled them to say, well, the unemployment's not as bad, because they've created, I think it's 800,000 fewer full-time posts. And what we're really seeing in the country is the rise of the zero-hour contract and the rise of part-time work. Now, there's 800,000 people on workfare schemes and apprentices. Apprentices do not do what apprenticeships used to do. It's the name that they've used to enable them to make it look like they're doing something for people. It's about people who are making coffee in cafe shops in Blackpool at £2.65 an hour that used to attract minimum wage. It's about receptionists running hotels in Blackpool who used to get paid minimum wage, now being told that they're on an apprenticeship getting £2.65 an hour. It's a way to avoid having to pay people. And also we get a bit of a kickback as well, because the government gives them an opportunity to have an additional amount of money they're agreeing to take these apprenticeships on. And as for the United Resistance, I think we should all go to the 19. Absolutely.
Thank you. I think we've got Anna.
Hi. Yes, being 10 in 1945. I remember the house covered in posters, vote Labour. An old comrade in Leicester C&D, who was fighting in the war, he said that, of course, one of the things that had happened, because it was a conscripted war, everybody together, they learnt from each other. They came back from the war wanting change. The other thing that happened at the end of that dreadful war was when they came back, we had arms conversion. And what have we got now? 100 billion and rising being poured into Trident, and wars all over the place. You can attack Syria. Oh, hang on a minute, maybe not. You know, and that is very, and of course people in Britain, oh, well, we've got to keep safe, haven't we? We've got to keep safe. You're not safe with that lot of costs. So arms conversion, we need that now. I have just come back, I wasn't there on the demo, I've only just come back from 1 week in Crete with Thomas Cook. I've never been anywhere Greek before. The Thomas Cook guide, on the way back from an outing to a very important place, Knossos, gave a political talk on her megaphone thing, you know, on the coach, about what was happening in Greece, the appalling situation of the people in Greece who go into work one day and find their wages have been halved again. And then in Crete, on the last day, in a nice little shop, this woman had her little girl sitting next to her, and she said she's come back today to say that they're only going to have half-day schooling in the future. And this is what we've got approaching us, and the fascists in Greece. We have to really make people understand what you get with all these pressures on people, with being unemployed. They will turn to fascism and turn against anyone who doesn't look quite English.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think we need to be clear about what's happening at the moment. We've actually got the biggest revolution in terms of the balance of class forces in this country that there's been since the Second World War. The Tories are not deluded or misguided. They are clear-sighted representatives of their class. There is no place in capitalism for a public sector. If you invest billions in the public sector, it's dead capital. It's not making profit. Capitalism is about generating profit, and therefore the public sector has to go. And so we privatise the hospitals, we privatise the schools, we privatise the old people's homes, and we privatise those who are on benefit by making them work to get those benefits. The Tories are absolutely clear what they're doing. Our big problem is that we have nothing being articulated nationally as an alternative to that. Because a capitalist system that offers only mass unemployment, no public sector, no services, offers nothing to the vast majority of the people. Capitalism is actually only serving the needs of a tiny minority. We need to be making that clear, and to get rid of this notion that in some way the capitalist system is normal. It's not normal, it's an aberration.
Oh, thank you. Yes, Frank Friedman. What I want to say is, we've heard a lot about money today. And money can change. They call it inflation. What we should call it is devaluation. It's going on constantly. It's one of the biggest tricks to wind us down. They might get a pay increase, and they can take that back in a week or two, or a year or two, or whenever they choose, simply by devaluing the value of the currency. And what we need to think about is having our fair shares of what's available. Money's obviously a mechanism through which we do that, but someone's in control of it, and it needs to be us. Really, that's sort of following up from everything that everyone else has said. But it's the real things. There's plenty of people to do the work that isn't getting done. The people who are chucked out of their jobs here, there, and everywhere. The people who are going to go onto this work fair. The resources, and we need to think more in terms of the resources that we're using up, and not this distorted market view that values everything in terms of money, although it's an essential part of the way we do things.
Yeah, it's just a couple of things. Just to go on this thing about 45 again, and the historical context of 45. A guy called Kierkegaard said, life has to be lived forward, but it can only be understood backwards. And I think there's a bit of a danger on the left of like, we just keep looking backwards. I think we have to have a vision for the future, a vision for a future society. And just to take one example, everybody should have super-fast broadband. Nowadays, it's becoming, if you don't have that, because everything is online, so that's one idea. And you know, and I think it is about shrinking the state, but also pushing down living standards. That's, you know, and increase the profitability of the companies. Just on Trident, I mean, there's a guy called Simon Jenkins who writes in Evening Standard and The Guardian. He's the chairman of the National Trust. And he's a bit of a, used to be the editor of the Times. He's a bit of a patrician Tory, if you like. And he wrote an article last week in The Guardian about the nonsense of Trident. You know, Trident, or the replacement of Trident, more the point. When he talked about no money, you know, as Tony Benn used to say, you never heard them say, you know, oh gosh, there's no money to go to war. But, you know, we live in a world where, you know, the top 322 people on the planet, there's 9 million people on this planet, the top 322 people own more wealth than the bottom 4 billion. Think about that. 322 people own more than the bottom 4 billion on this planet. That's the kind of world that we live in, and we've got to make the case. But I think we've got to, as a left, we've got to make a case, you know, of things don't have to be like this. The state itself is a relatively modern institution in historical terms, and it is about collectivism. And my kind of take on capitalism, it's kind of like a world that's not grown up. To think that if everybody acts in their own self-interest, everybody will be better off. I don't think that's demonstrably true. So I think it is about us having a vision for the future and having a vision of victory. And I'll finish on this point, and the last thing I've said. I bet most people here were involved, if they were around at the time, or you know, politically active at the time, were in Stop the War, right? Or went on demos. And the funny thing about Stop the War, it was so different than the Falklands-Malvinas War, because if you was against that war, you know, it wasn't a good place to be, because most people thought it was a great thing. When Stop the War started, it was a bit odd in a way. Everyone, yeah, we don't think we should go into Iraq. And everyone was against it, and it was almost a strange thing. And we had all the demonstrations, massive demonstrations, Daily Mirror, special editions and all the rest of it. And it used to be the most boring thing people said about struggle. Well, you didn't stop going into Iraq, did you? So you didn't stop the war. But a few weeks ago, what we'd done 10 years ago, we stopped an invasion in Syria. Absolutely. So sometimes, you know, it takes a while to get the message through. It may well be like this in terms of what we do. We've got to hold to our opinions and continue. And I just one final thing. I think there's a tendency for us to go around and stir up apathy and say how bad things are. But I always think, you know, we've got to look for the points of. I found out for me, and it really cheered me up to find out that Greggs is a unionised workplace. So not only do I not feel guilty going in there and buying a big pasties, I'm not going into a workplace because it's a union member. Thank you.
Now then, I should be starting the breakaway sessions now, but I've got 7 people in line, and if you're burning to ask the questions or make the comment, I'm going to let you all do it. We'll make time up later, so please keep them brief. I'm going to Barry first, and then Wayne. Gentleman at the back there, here, over there, T-shirt, and at the back. Okay.
Might I say quickly with the signing issue going along the road, we haven't already signed it.
Thank you. Please do sign it.
Thank you. Well, I'm Barry Fairbairn. I'm a member of Leicester
the Labour Party. I'm not particularly active in it, I have to admit, but I am involved in a movement. It's a very significant movement represented here today, the trade union movement. Many of us here are in the Labour Party like me, and I believe there will be some cooperators amongst us too. One thing that's concerned me throughout all my adult life is why the people's movements have never dealt with monarchy.
Here, here.
We're all talking about trust. These people don't see it, they don't get it. It makes me very, very angry. I'm a criminal legal aid lawyer. I'm not here to bleat about that. My colleagues, the voting Tory or Republican lives, are doing that and save UK justice. I'm not. But the cuts against criminal legal aid are about £220 million. That's exactly what it costs to run this lot.
Thank you.
Can you all join Republic?
Yeah.
We're all nice. We're not traitors. We're the true patriots.
Thank you.
Yeah, yeah. Come round for a coffee, Barry.
I think a welfare system and actually create property is absolutely wrong. I know from what I've seen in my own ward in recent months, I'm absolutely, I'm absolutely completely straight. I had a family of 6 who were left without benefits for 2 weeks, and they were left without food for 2 days. That was 4 children going hungry. As soon as I found out about this, I was able to do something, and I got local services involved. But now I'm in a situation that some of those local services that help that family are now part of the cuts that we're going to be making and the reshaping of services that we're currently going through. Where does this madness end?
Thank you.
Martin Page, Branch Secretary, PCS, Leicester Revenue and Customs Branch. It's had to say that I'm sometimes ashamed of who I work for, and I've been for the last couple of years, over our assistants of helping big business over and over again. It's not the ordinary workers' fault, but our bosses seem to like to hand lots of money back to big business when they don't deserve it. Around the quiet time with PCS, we've been involved in lots of action over the last couple of years. I'm sure you're aware. This weekend's our quiet time, so we thought we'd come to a rally. In between our group-wide overtime ban that was reimposed last night from 12 o'clock. At 7 o'clock on Monday morning, we will be commencing non-cooperation with all forms of our new performance agreements. So members will be taking action. I think that shows a lot of what's going on in our department. One of the questions I wanted to ask was, mention was made about the amount of money that's being held in company accounts, in company stuff around around the world. The question is, how do we get our money on that? And what I would like to see is some complete worked out programme about what we can unite on and where we need to be to get that money. Because that's the key question. We can all say how bad things are, we need to have that.
Thank you.
My name's Tom Michael from Unite Rep at Leicester University. We're piloting at the moment for action over pay. We've been offered 1% below inflation pay rise for the 4th or 5th year running the term. What I wanted to say, I wanted to kind of agree with Ian's point about we need to understand how the system works, but we also need to take action, because there's no point just kind of sitting around and learning about how it works. We need some victories on our side, because we need the consciousness of how the system works, but we also need the confidence that some real victories can win. And that's why with the Sparks dispute, when they beat the Besner agreement, when the Hovis workers beat 0-hour contracts, we need to shout that as loud as possible right across the movement, because as we've seen from Saturday's demo, the absolutely minimal coverage it got, tens of thousands of people on the streets of Manchester. So we need to increase our combativity as well through increasing our confidence. Because
I'll just stop you there because in the breakaway sessions we will talk about resistance.
okay, cool.
Thank you.
I just want to talk a bit about that.
I'm afraid we're running out of time. Very briefly.
Yeah, I think everybody in this room agrees that we need to fight back. I very quickly want to address how we fight back. Yes, Manchester was brilliant, but at the end of the day, you know, it's brilliant. I'm fantastic you're part of a strike action. I'm so bloody proud of the Ovis workers, they're brilliant. Your union is absolutely fantastic. But the way we're going to win this is by taking strike action ultimately at the end of the day. This government is weak and it's divided and people forget that. It's about strike action, it's about when the postal workers find the strike action and they get the strike action, we support them. It's when the homeless workers go out and strike, wherever it is in the country, because all over the country, we support them. My union is the most radical union in the world, unfortunately, it's Unison. It was a big fight. I won't have a job in 3 years, do you know what I mean? The last thing is, where your leadership is weak, like in Unison, you argue with your leadership. We want action, want it now, because by God, if we don't take the fight to them, well, they're already bringing it to us.
My question is, we're all talking about the unions and things like that. For me, on the local side, why do the unions not actually support other people that are not in the union? So sort of say, for instance, things like the bedroom tax or other welfare reforms. At the end of the day, we need people in the unions to also come out and support people in the community, as well as other community groups to come together. So we actually go against the council and the government as a whole. We also need the local councillors and members of parliament within inside. Also, at the minute, they're all there raising their hand saying, we agree with what you're saying, and yes, what the central government at this stage is doing is wrong, but nobody's fighting it. So we need to come together, and I think one of the starts of that is from the unions.
Thank you. Final comments, please. Thank you.
Yeah, what I was going to say, I just will say that to put this event on today, it costs quite a bit of money, so 200 quid, so we're going to have a collection later, so if you all give James the pay for the room and the leaflets and all the hard work, so everybody can fill it.
Thanks very much.
Just to answer that last thing, last but one point in relation to trade unions working with other groups. I mean, People's Assembly had resistance, coalition of resistance. The trade unions were involved in all those, bedroom tax. I mean, if it wasn't for trade unions' finances that helped support a lot of those campaigns, then a lot of those campaigns wouldn't take off the ground. But it's not all about money, it's all about, you know, being able to put pressure. I mean, stuff that goes on that people may or may not realise about putting the pressure on politicians where it can impact on them. Yeah, I think trade unions are at the forefront. They recognise the importance also of having the community involved in that as well. And I think it's critical that we never divide ourselves, we unite ourselves. And we shouldn't blame one another. If we ain't doing something that we should be doing, then what we should be doing is making sure that we talk about it, discuss it, and see what we can do to make sure we can go forward together, because that's the only way we will beat them, by working together.
Hold on a minute. Yeah, we need to work out. We need analysis, but it's not academic what we need. We're not talking about academic issues, but we do need analysis what's going on in the economy. So every union dealt with workers. Well, you know, I've done that when we was a local branch, and the print workers often demonised about all say practice. You know, I think what you have to do first of all is demonstrate the power of the people you organise. That's the first thing. You know, so the print workers often, you often hear them nowadays demonised. You know, they had houses in the country, they had good cars. I've never apologised. We represent some of the, believe it or not, we represent some of the best paid people in Britain, right? We got people in some, a minority, but nonetheless, make no apologies for that. That's what being in the trade union is about. But the print workers were like that, and yet they always supported the health workers. You know, and let's not forget, it was print workers who became the catalyst of the general strike. because they refused, they had a bit of history, they refused to publish the Daily Mail.
Thank you. Now, look, in a moment, I'd like you to say a really big thank you to these two guys, but to say that in a moment, we're going to move to these breakaway sessions. We'll stay in this room to save time, so we'll go over in that corner for the austerity in the public sector. In the middle there, maybe, for austerity in the private sector, and privatisation of public services, if we put that over there. There's a flip chart for each one, for each group. Now, we're going to have to reconvene at about 3:45 for the feedback from each group. The important thing is, please, in these groups, please concentrate your sessions on future activities for resistance and action, and then bring it back to the floor. So for now, thank you Ian, thank you Billy. It's been a real privilege to have you here with us. Thank